My story unfolds in a world that's a bit too cushioned, all thanks to my overprotective parents. Jade, don't forget to call us as soon as you get to school. My mom would remind me every single day, handing me my phone, now equipped with a tracking app. It's just to make sure you're always safe, she added, her eyes filled with concern. In 8th grade, my life took a turn towards endless studying.
Your education is your top priority, Jade. Remember, no distractions.
My dad would assert, guiding me back to my desk, which was always buried under mountains of books. Then came my 14th birthday. I was hoping, just this once, to go to Mia's party. Can I please go? I asked with hopeful eyes, but the answer was a firm
no. It's not safe. We'll have a nice little celebration at home.
So there I sat, at home, feigning happiness at a quiet, uneventful birthday with just my parents for company. 9th grade brought its own set of rules.
We're limiting your phone use to just educational purposes,
my mom announced one evening, methodically deleting all my social apps. My social life was reduced to nothing more than texts about homework and school projects. Even when I tried to join the debate team, thinking it would be a good compromise, the answer was the same.
Debating might be too stressful for you, Jade. Let's keep the focus on your studies,
they said, shutting down yet another attempt of mine to do something beyond academics. So there I was, confined to a world where my only role was to study, not a single school activity on my schedule. It felt like being a bird in a gilded cage, safe, yet restricted. As this part of my story wraps up, and if you're intrigued to find out what's next for me, make sure you hit like and subscribe. It's like turning the page in an enthralling book. You never know what the next chapter might hold. Stick around, because my journey is just getting started. One day at school, something caught my eye. It was a bright, colorful pamphlet pinned to the bulletin board, an invitation to join the art club. My heart skipped a beat. Art had always been my secret passion, a hidden escape from the world of endless studying. With a mix of excitement and nervousness, I approached Miss Carter, the art club teacher. She greeted me with a warm smile. I've always wanted to join the art club, I blurted out, then hesitated. But my parents would never agree. Carter's expression turned to understanding. We sat down and she listened as I poured out my frustrations about my overprotective parents. Jade, it's important to balance studies with activities that feed your soul, she advised gently. Why don't you talk to your parents? Explain how much this means to you. Her words gave me a flicker of hope. That evening, I mustered all my courage with my parents. I want to join the art club at school. It's something I'm really passionate about, I said, trying to sound convincing. Their reaction was immediate and predictable.
Jade, you know how important your studies are. We don't want you to get distracted,
my dad said firmly. My mom nodded in agreement, a look of concern on her face. I felt a surge of frustration. It was always the same. My wishes, my interests, always overshadowed by their obsession with academics. That's when I made a decision. It was time to take control, to do something for myself. Without telling my parents, I went back to school the next day and signed up for the art club. The first project in the art club was like a breath of fresh air. Draw anything you wish, Miss Carter had said. My mind whirled with ideas, but I settled on something close to my heart. I drew a bird, small and delicate, trapped in a gilded cage, its wings fluttering against the bars, yearning for freedom. It was a reflection of my own life. Word about my painting spread like wildfire across the school. Have you seen Jade's painting? I'd overhear in the hallways. It's incredible. The compliments were overwhelming, but exhilarating. Even Miss Carter took a moment to praise it. Jade, your painting speaks volumes. It's powerful. However, the attention it garnered went beyond the school walls. It wasn't long before my parents heard about it from other parents. The news of my secret participation in the art club came as a shock to them. The atmosphere at home shifted dramatically. My parents, usually so vocal about my life, suddenly fell into a heavy silence. The dinner table, once filled with conversations about school and studies, became a silent battleground. One evening, my mom finally broke the silence.
Jade,
We heard about your art club and your painting, she said, her voice cold and distant.
Why did you feel the need to hide this from us?
I tried to explain. I just wanted to do something I loved, something for myself. But the words felt hollow in the thick air of disappointment that hung between us. For days, their disappointment was palpable. They'd speak to me only when necessary, their words clipped and formal. It was like living with two strangers who just happened to share the same house. My dad, usually the more approachable one, turned stern.
We've always wanted what's best for you, Jade, but you going behind our backs? That's not acceptable.
His disappointment stung more than any reprimand. The house, once my safe haven, felt like a prison. My parents' silence was a constant reminder of their disapproval. It weighed heavily on me, but deep down, I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. Days turned into weeks, and soon I learned that my cousin, Leah, was moving to our town. She'd been accepted into a local college and was going to stay with us while her dorm was being prepared. Leah was like a breath of fresh air in our house. She was vibrant, outgoing, and her life was a stark contrast to mine. She'd go out with friends, catch movies, and live a life that seemed so foreign to me. One day, Leah sat down with me, her expression serious, yet kind. Jade, life's not just about following rules. You're nearly an adult. It's time you start living a little, she said with a wink. Her words resonated with me, igniting a spark of rebellion. I began sneaking out with her, experiencing the thrill of late-night movie runs and the laughter-filled dinners at fast food joints. For the first time, I tasted the sweetness of teenage freedom. But with this newfound liberty, my life started to tilt off balance. Art club meetings, once the highlight of my week, became a second thought. I can't make it today, got plans, became my regular message to Miss Carter. My art supplies gathered dust, a silent testament to my neglect. Homework deadlines started slipping past me. I'd find myself hastily scribbling assignments moments before class, the quality nowhere near my usual standard.
Jade, this isn't like you,
my teachers remarked, their brows furrowed in concern. My grades, once a source of pride, began to plummet. Math tests returned with red marks, and essays were filled with more comments than compliments. The realization that I was faltering academically hit me hard, but the allure of hanging out with Leah and friends was too tempting to resist. Late-night escapades turned into a regular affair. I'd laugh and chat with friends, ignoring the nagging voice in my head reminding me of the unopened textbooks on my desk. I was living in the moment, but each moment away from my responsibilities added weight to the growing pile of consequences. Leah, oblivious to my academic struggles, continued to enjoy her balanced college life. But for me, it was a downward spiral. Each day I strayed further from the disciplined student I once was, getting lost in a whirlwind of social activities. The days of recklessness caught up with me sooner than I expected. It happened the day our math test results were handed back. The paper felt heavy in my hands, the big red D glaring back at me. Panic set in. I had never scored so low. At home, my parents questioned me about the test.
How did it go, Jade?
My mom asked, hopeful. I hesitated, the truth too heavy to admit. It went well, I lied, forcing a smile. The guilt gnawed at me, but I couldn't bear to see the disappointment in their eyes. The day everything changed started just like any other, until I saw my parents at school, deep in conversation with Mrs. Thompson, my math teacher. My heart sank. Something was definitely up. As I got closer, I caught snippets of their discussion.
Extremely worried about Jay's recent performance.
Miss Thompson was expressing her concern. I felt a knot in my stomach. They were talking about my grades. Spotting me, my mom's face was a mix of worry and surprise.
Jade, we need to talk,
my dad said, his voice grave. We all moved to a small meeting room, heavy with the anticipation of a difficult conversation. Sitting there, it felt like I was on trial, with Mrs. Thompson starting the proceedings.
Jade, your math grades have declined sharply,
she said, her tone kind yet firm. My parents looked shocked, their faces reflecting confusion and concern.
We had no idea,
my mom said softly, almost to herself. But then Mrs. Thompson turned to my parents.
I think there's more to this than just grades. Jade is a bright student, but there needs to be a balance between academic pressure and personal growth,
she explained gently. My parents seemed taken aback, as if this was a perspective they hadn't considered. The room's atmosphere shifted from one of blame to understanding. I found my voice, shaky but honest. I've been struggling, I admitted. Not just with school, but with finding out who I am beyond just a student. Mrs. Thompson nodded encouragingly.
It's important for Jade to explore her interests and talents, she said, looking at my parents. It's part of growing up and becoming a well-rounded individual.
The conversation that followed was a revelation for all of us. We discussed a plan to improve my academic performance, but more importantly, we talked about how I could balance my studies with my passions in a healthy way. As we left the school, my mom's hand reached for mine, her touch gentle.
We're here for you, Jade. We may have lost sight of what's truly important, but we'll work on this together,
she said, her voice filled with newfound understanding. That day marked the beginning of a new chapter. It was about finding a balance, not just for me, but for my whole family. With the support and understanding of both my parents and teachers, I felt a renewed sense of hope. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was no longer walking it alone.